Welcome back to the FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Game Week 4. We're in the middle of an international break, but there's still a lot to discuss on the FPL front, and some of those popular and highly owned assets will be affected by certain things that have happened during the international break, and I'll discuss that throughout this video today. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you enjoy my content. Let's try to get to 35 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're also looking to get this video to 300 likes. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCN, for the latest FPL and news fantasy updates. Join the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Town, as well as Spotify. Leaving a 5-star review on my podcast goes a long way to supporting the channel, so thank you very much to those that have shown support already. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first purchase I'm going to recommend is a fairly simple one in Mohamed Salah. It might be difficult to have him and Erling Haaland at the same time, but if you've got the wild card or you've rolled transfers and have 3 available for Game Week 4, it might be a bit easier to facilitate that sort of structure, having the 2 best assets in the game. They're both joint for most bonus points in 8 and the most FPL points overall with 41, and that's courtesy to 3 goals and 3 assists from Mohamed Salah. He decimated Manchester United, as he typically does, to be fair, particularly in recent meetings at Old Trafford. His ownership is soaring. It's currently 41.4%, and it would not surprise me if it reached close to 50 by the Game Week 4 deadline. His price is 12.6 million, but we are expecting it to go up to 12.7 million at some stage during the international break, if not possibly towards the very end as we approach that deadline. The next few fixtures are fantastic, particularly Game Weeks 4 and 5, consecutive home games there for Liverpool against Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. The underlying numbers are fantastic. 5 big chances for the Egyptian, 4 big chances created, 10 shots, all of them inside the box. These numbers are terrific. He has been outperforming the XG and the expected assists, but he's always got good underlying numbers and fantastic productivity. So Mohamed Salah is arguably the best asset in the game alongside Erling Haaland, and in my opinion, he outscored the Norwegian over the next 2 game weeks. As you would have seen in the graphic earlier, João Pedro is the most transferred in player at the moment. This may change over the next week or so, and there's one piece of news which may impact his chances of starting in Game Week 4 against Ipswich Town at home, or at least of playing 90 minutes, and that's the fact that he's been called up to Brazil. So be very careful if you're looking to buy João Pedro this week, because there is a chance he doesn't even start in Game Week 4. Danny Welbeck would be more nailed on in my opinion, but it's also worth mentioning that a lot of Brighton's players are going to have long travel distances, just like João Pedro. Mitoma is another prime example, but João Pedro's ownership is currently 27.6%. That's only going to keep on rising. He's got 2 goals and no assists for the season, with 2 big chances and 18 FPL points. I think Brighton assets look fantastic for the next 2 game weeks. Then the fixtures get relatively tough, but I still think they can deliver, particularly the attackers like João Pedro and Danny Welbeck. So he is still a buy in my opinion. Just be very careful about him. He is not a guaranteed starter for Game Week 4, and the same goes for a lot of South Americans like Luis Diaz, and I discussed this in the best wildcard team video and podcast the other day. João Pedro's underlying numbers aren't particularly great. His XG is 0.86. The expected assist is also 0.29. Only 3 key passes, 1 big chance created, and only 5 shots, but I think he's quite clinical from time to time. He's very good for bonus points, and I can see him getting a lot of goal contributions this season. There has been a lot of talk about Emil Smith-Rowe and Morgan Rogers as the best budget midfielders, but Semenyo takes the mantle for the time being. He has delivered in every single gimmick so far, with 2 goals and 1 assist, and in terms of underlying numbers, they are absolutely sensational, particularly for a 5.6 million midfielder. His price did go up the other day, and he's one of the only popular assets going into Game Week 4 who has seen a price rise. His ownership is 4.8%, 19 FPL points for the season, which is more than João Pedro, for example. The next 2 fixtures don't look great, but I could see Bournemouth scoring goals against Chelsea, and Semenyo scored at Anfield last season to give the Cherries the lead before Liverpool ended up winning 3-1. So I still like him a lot as an asset, even if he's not playing down the middle, courtesy of the signing of Evanilson. Semenyo is still very lethal on the right-hand side, and he's probably Bournemouth's best attacker. And with Solanke leaving the club, I think Semenyo will take the mantle of getting the most goals in that Bournemouth team. But 17 shots is absolutely ridiculous. Also 11 shots inside the box. The XG and expected assists are both over 1. 2 big chances, 2 big chances created, and 4 key passes. Some of those numbers aren't particularly great, but remember, for a 5.6 million midfielder, that is far better than the likes of Smith-Rowe and Morgan Rogers. So I'd highly recommend Semenyo if you haven't bought him already, and if you're in the market for a budget midfielder, look no further than the Ghanaian. Bukayo Saka has just turned 23, and his stats are simply ridiculous for Arsenal in the last couple of seasons. He has started the new campaign on fire with 1 goal, 3 assists, no blanks, and 1 double-digit haul, which came in Game Week 1 against Wolves. 8 key passes is the standout number overall, but he's got a lot of good numbers flying around in terms of shots, chances created, and pretty much everything across the bat. He's been doing it now for 2 or 3 years, where his numbers are rivaling those of Mohamed Salah and the best wingers in world football. 24 FPL points is a very decent return. The problem is Tottenham and Man City away await the Gunners. Then you have some fantastic fixtures. Leicester and Southampton at home back-to-back, followed up by Bournemouth away, where Saka did very well last season. And then you've got another set of tough fixtures for Arsenal, facing the likes of Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea, with 2 of those games being away from home. After that, Arsenal have an incredible run until March or April, but there's no denying that the fixtures are very mixed bag for the first 11 game weeks of the season, despite game week 6 to 8 looking fantastic for the Gunners. So Saka is still a hold for me, but if you are looking to buy a Mohamed Salah for the next 2 or 3 game weeks, I can completely understand that, and I would make such a move. But in most cases, I would just keep Saka, because you want Arsenal players in place for those games against newly promoted clubs like Southampton and Leicester consecutively at home, and even Bournemouth away is an appealing fixture for the Gunners. Now, Saka has 9 shots inside the box, 7 shots on target, 3 big chances, 2 big chances created, and his XG is 1.33. So the numbers are very good. There is a big overperformance in terms of his XA, the expected assists, but I still think Saka will be right up there in terms of chance creators this season, and he will get over 10 assists and goals once again. I would apply similar logic and reasoning for Arsenal defenders such as Saliba, Gabriel and Ben White. Despite the fact that the attacking potential from these defenders has been minimal at best, Saliba's XGI is 0.02. He doesn't look like scoring or assisting at the moment, but that could come at any moment, and Arsenal haven't really been at it in terms of set pieces compared to the last campaign, but that may change in the coming weeks. Saliba's priced at 6 million. His ownership is still very high at 38.4%. With 14 FPL points for the season, Arsenal conceded their only goal after going down to 10 men against Brighton. Who knows, it might have been 3 clean sheets out of 3 if it didn't happen, but it's ifs, buts and maybes, and Arsenal will still keep one of the most clean sheets, if not the most, for the Premier League campaign. The next 2 games look really tough though, and Saliba is benchable in such matches, but against Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth, I could see 3 clean sheets out of 3 potentially, or at least 2, and that would be enough to justify keeping the likes of Saliba, Gabriel and Ben White in your FPL teams. You may also be asking about Timber. I wouldn't go there, because at left back, I would expect rotation between Zinchenko, Timber and Calafiori, not to mention other options who can play left back like Kieran Tierney from time to time and Tomiyasu, who are currently out injured. So stick with one of those key Arsenal defenders if you want to, but the best way to cover the Gunners defensively at the moment is David Raya in goal. It may surprise you to learn that Josko Gvardiol is the 4th most transferred out player ahead of Game Week 4, and this may change over the next week or so as more people make transfers, but it's very interesting to see. Despite the fact that City face Arsenal and Newcastle over the next 3 game weeks, the long-term fixtures are exceptional for Manchester City, including Fulham at home in Game Week 7. Gvardiol's ownership is 29.4%. He is still priced at 6 million, but I do admit the fact that Rico Lewis is in the team does hinder Gvardiol's attacking potential, and you'd probably want Kyle Walker back in the starting 11 as soon as possible, because that gives Gvardiol the license to bomb forward, and we saw what he could do towards the end of last season. He's got 4 shots so far, which isn't too bad for a left back who's playing a more defensive role at the moment. 11 FPL points, with 7 of them coming in Game Week 1 against Chelsea. But I think Gvardiol is going to offer a lot more later in the season. But if you do have him, I'd probably hold in most cases, because I think the best premium defenders lie with Arsenal, generally speaking. Yet if you look at their next 2 fixtures, I wouldn't be looking to buy them in right now. Instead, I'd wait until Game Week 6. Then you're looking at Liverpool defenders like Trent, Robertson and Van Dijk. That could be another alternative solution for you. Or maybe you want to downgrade Gvardiol to a cheaper defender, and that could allow you to buy a Salah or some of the best assets in the midfield or forward line. In those scenarios, I think Gvardiol could be a sell, but generally speaking, if you can help it, I think Gvardiol is worth holding on to. When we discuss attacking potential, assist threat and bonus points, there aren't many better than Pedro Porro in the defensive line, particularly at 5.5 million or below. And that's why his ownership is still very high at 35%. He's got 1 goal this season, which came against Leicester, and he's got 8 shots for the season, which is tremendous for a wing-back. 16 FPL points is a very decent return, and Spurs did quite well against Newcastle. They were quite unlucky to lose that game. They should have gotten a draw at the very least, but that is the main issue with Porro and all these Spurs defenders. You can't really trust them for clean sheets, but the saving grace with the Spaniard is the assists, bonus points, and probably fun you have along the way. And in my opinion, he is the best Spurs asset overall, even over Heung-min Son and Solanke when you factor in price and the competition around him. But I think Porro is worth holding on to. You probably would want to bench him in Game Week 4 against Arsenal at home, but if you are backing him to do something offensively, I don't think that's the worst call in the world. And you definitely want to start him against Brentford, Man United and Brighton. And these are fixtures where Porro did very well last season. He got assists in Game Week 6 and 7 in those corresponding fixtures last season at the Amex and Old Trafford. So I think Porro is definitely one you'd want to keep if possible. But in Game Week 6 and beyond, you could make a switch like Porro to an Arsenal defender, and that could work very well in terms of clean sheets. But none of those defenders will probably offer the same attacking threat as the Spaniard. Martin Odegaard is one of the best players in the Premier League. He's such a creative player and a joy to watch, but in the new season, the underlying stats are pretty dreadful, and he's never looked like scoring or assisting. He's had 2 big chances which he has fumbled, both against Brighton and Aston Villa, and his finishing certainly needs to improve. The season before last, he was the highest scoring midfielder in FPL in terms of goals scored with 15 non-penalty goals, but he hasn't really been able to replicate that, and he's always creating a lot of chances and not really getting the assists he deserves. 7 FPL points is a very poor showing for a player of Odegaard's quality. 5 key passes is decent, but I'd still expect much better from the Norwegian. Only 1 big chance created. The expected assist is 0.5. The expected goals is 0.55. He is probably due an attacking return, but the next 2 fixtures look terrible. After that, I think Odegaard could be fantastic between Game Week 6 to 8, and he can deliver in the big games, but I'd rather have Bukayo Saka to cover the Arsenal attack, not to mention Kai Havertz up front, who is even cheaper than Odegaard and will score far more goals and get more goal contributions this season. So my advice is to sell Odegaard. You can also get better FPL assets for an even cheaper price, like Mbeumo and Eze. I would urge a lot of caution with this particular move, but selling Rodrigo Muniz might be the best course of action for your FPL team, as there are better budget forwards like Chris Wood, Danny Welbeck, and Joao Pedro. Then you'd be looking at Rodrigo Muniz in 4th or 5th as the best budget forwards in the game. And the next 3 fixtures look very good for Fulham, especially for their attackers like Rodrigo Muniz, facing West Ham at home and Nottingham Forest away. Even Newcastle isn't a particularly bad fixture for the attackers, but that's no goals or assists for the Brazilian so far this season. 6 FPL points, 11 shots inside the box is an outstanding stat. The other numbers aren't particularly great, with only 1 big chance. The XG is 1.02, and the XA, the expected assist, is almost non-existent at 0.02. I'd rather have Emil Smith-Rowe to cover Fulham offensively, and there are better budget forwards on the market, as I discussed earlier, so Rodrigo Muniz is a sell, in my opinion. The first skip of this podcast is Bryan Mbeumo, but I have to caveat this from the beginning. This is a Game Week 4 specific thing because Mbeumo is proven to be very popular due to his antics against Southampton, but I wouldn't buy him in against Manchester City. If you're wildcarding, having Mbeumo is completely fine. You can bench him against City and start a better midfielder or forward instead, but he's not someone you want to start at the Etihad. He can do something, but his ceiling won't be very high. And I think it's an example of people chasing last week's points by buying him at this stage of the season. So the best time to buy Mbeumo would be Game Week 6 ideally, but I wouldn't even mind Game Week 5 against Tottenham away, as Brentford will get plenty of opportunities in that game. He's priced at 7.1 million. His ownership is rising slowly. It's currently at 7.7%. 3 goals and no assists for the season, with 4 big chances created being a very good start in my opinion, with 24 FPL points, and even other numbers like 7 key passes, 2 big chances, and 6 shots is decent. But of course, I think the shot volume isn't the greatest you'll ever see. He's averaging 2 shots per game, and let's see if he can maybe improve upon some of these numbers going further into the season. And I think he will when he faces West Ham and Wolves at home consecutively. But Man City away will be a tough ask for any team or player, let alone Bryan Mbeumo. So if you want to buy the Cameroonian international, I would suggest to do so in Game Week 5 or 6. As things stand, Luca Dean looks like the best Aston Villa defender to buy, but I would urge caution here as well because at left back, I would expect rotation between him and Maatsen, especially when the Champions League comes into play after the international break. But Luca Dean has the most assist threat or bonus points from any starting defender at the moment. That includes Nedeljkovic or the other 4 million defender who started in his place at right back, Konsa and Pau Torres, but I think Luca Dean is a skip because rotation will be a big factor on the left flank for Aston Villa over the next couple of weeks. He's got 1 assist, which came in Game Week 3 against Leicester City, where he got 2 bonus points and his only 90-minute appearance this season. On the other 2 occasions, he was subbed off for Ian Maatsen. 2 big chance created is very decent for a 4-point family and defender, and he's actually touted to have a price rise very soon, despite his ownership being 4.7%, which is very low. He's a massive differential, and he could work for you, especially in a few specific game weeks, but I wouldn't trust him to start week in, week out when the Champions League comes into play, and this will only be intensified when the domestic cups like the Carabao and FA Cup also come into play. With the FA Cup, we don't have to think about that too much until later in the season, but it's also worth having in the back of your mind. So Luca Dean for me is a skip. If you disagree, let me know down in the comment section below. In today's podcast, I've covered 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip, and towards the beginning, I showed you the most transferred in players, and right now on screen you can see the most transferred out. Isak is top with almost 500,000 managers taking the Swede out of their FPL teams. I would not suggest that against Wolves away. He's got a good record against them, and they've been shocking defensively this season. Just refer back to Game Week 2 and the 6 goals they conceded to Chelsea. But I can understand people who are doing it to facilitate a move to Mohamed Salah, and I'll discuss this in my own team selection and potentially a transfer plans video and podcast if you want to see that. But thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this to the 300 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the channel memberships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Hound, and also Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 4 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.